in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers but branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Confirmed, the GOP convention is moving to Jacksonville, Florida. The Republican National Committee issuing a statement Thursday evening. The GOP convention was originally scheduled for Charlotte, but pulled out. North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper wouldn't guarantee the event would not be subject to social distancing regulations. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff weighing in on calls to rename American military bases that now bear the names of Confederate generals.
General Mark Milley says he's open to renaming Fort Benning, home of the infantry, Fort Bragg, home to the airborne and the special forces, and the list goes on. Former four-star General David Petraeus wrote in an op-ed, "We do not live in a country to which Braxton Bragg, Henry L. Benning, or Robert E. Lee can serve as inspiration. Acknowledging this fact is imperative." But in a tweet, President Trump said, "My administration will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations."
Fox's Leland Vittert, some senators are pushing legislation that would force the bases to be renamed. The Senate Judiciary Committee voting Thursday to subpoena dozens of former Obama administration officials to testify to the committee about their roles in the FBI's Russia investigation. An arrest has been made of a Seattle protester on arson charges.
Margaret Shannon was arrested at her home Thursday and charged with 5 federal arson counts. Investigators used surveillance camera video that captured the woman setting fire to Seattle police vehicles. Shannon was easily identifiable because of tattoos on her arms and hands. Police also found clothing she wore in the footage during a search of her home. A federal arson conviction could carry a 10-year prison sentence. Shannon's first court appearance is scheduled for Friday afternoon. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hacaya and Tuman are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
This Father's Day, be one of 7 lucky winners of Circle K's Ultimate Father's Day Package. Get a case of tomahawk steak, a bottle of whiskey, a case of beer, and a Bacchus beer bag. That's a $300 value. Purchase $25 or more in fuel, or any 6-pack or more of Miller Lite, Coors Light, or Blue Moon to receive an entry form. Tune in to The Ray Gibson Show on The Point for more ways to win. Winners will be announced on June 17. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com or any Circle K location for more details.
Hafidi, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years. Tall Tales is also brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Well, here we are again, Tall Tales, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If I've said it once, I've said it a couple hundred times, right, Real Joe Cruz?
At the least, sir.
Yeah, and it bears repeating every day with the mainland United States seem to be succumbing or perhaps even embracing anarchy. If there were ever a time when the right to keep and bear arms were more than just a theoretical proposition, is right now. If I were living in some of these Democrat cities in the mainland, Chicago, Seattle, wow. Okay, so we go from there straight to Zemi Ikotny. And we don't have, it's pretty slim pickings today. The Daily News has, once again, is running some off-island boilerplate that's hardly worth mentioning. And the Post apparently wants to take the day off today. They've got a nice feel-good editorial. We Guam residents need this moment. Okay. Well, we need the next 2 hours is what we Guam residents need. A little bit of tall tales, right? So I'm not going to do any more with Zemi Ikotny. Obviously, no blue stars today, but I am going to make an announcement. So get your drums ready to roll back there, Real Joe Cruz. I've got to lay a foundation for the announcement that I'm going to make here. And I'm going to start out with an article from a website called lawliberty.org. It's a very good website. And they start out this way: the era of moral thuggery. And it starts like this: Lewis Hamilton, the 6-time world champion British Formula One driver, recently criticized his colleagues in the sport, auto racing, for saying nothing in the wake of George Floyd's death. He didn't criticize them for something they said.
For something they didn't say, sir.
Yeah. Now they must. This guy Hamilton must be listening to the radio program. He must be listening to the show every day, because he has shown us once again it's not what people do. Real Joe Cruz?
It's what they don't do sometimes.
Yeah. So he goes on to, the article goes on to say, if any answer to this accusation was required, a reasonable one might have been that it was not their place as mere car racers to comment on such matters. If they had wanted to engage in polemics, however, they might have pointed out that Hamilton had remained silent about terrible events in the world. Well, just take one for example: the war around the Great Lakes of Central Africa, which so far has claimed not one life but several million lives. Black lives matter to Hamilton, they might have said, but apparently not the lives of these Africans. Such a response would have led only to bitter and highly publicized reclamation, and would have taken considerable courage. It was far easier to cave into moral blackmail and get it over with by shedding a few crocodile tears in public. This is a misuse of the word crocodile tears. I'll come back to that later on. The interesting and important question is why such moral blackmail should work almost without fail. I wonder if that's, whatever it is, that element is what prompts groups like White Coats for Black Lives to come down and kneel at the Plaza de España. Going on here, clearly the kind of public expression of outrage that is required has to be selective. There can be no equal opportunity outrage, for not even the most self-righteous person can be outraged by every injustice in the world, from oil spillage in the Russian Arctic to the severance pay of Adam Newman. And if we fail to express our outrage at an injustice, it does not mean that we approve of it, much less that we're complicit in it. On the contrary, it's an acknowledgement of our own limitations and unimportance. If Lewis Hamilton expresses no opinion of the continuing war in Central Africa, it does not mean that he's anti-African, much less that he's actually complicit in the war crimes. The demonstrations in London and elsewhere are illustrative of two contemporary cultural traits. The first is the importance ascribed to opinion as an exclusive, or at least large, component of virtue. The second is the vehemence of expression as the marker of sincerity. So your opinions, first of all, are a component of virtue. You must think right in order to be seen as virtuous. And then the more vehement you are in expressing your opinion, the greater your sincerity. Holding right opinions has never, at least in this guy's lifetime, been as important as it is now. If, that is, you want a reputation as a good person. I'm a doctor. I'm a good person. I was at the demonstration for white coats for Black Lives Matter. I'm a good person. And if you don't believe me, here's my picture in the paper at the rally. No doubt there has always been a tendency for people to conform their ideas to those of their group in order to be considered sound, decent, or good people. And our Carl has commented on this in the past. But the pressure to conform to the latest orthodoxy has increased, is still increasing, and ought to be reduced. Actual conduct, which requires some effort, restraint, and even self-sacrifice, has correspondingly become less important in earning a reputation for goodness. Holding a placard, chanting a slogan, expressing an opinion, well, that's enough. In these circumstances, it's hardly surprising that vehemence should be mistaken for strength of feeling or sincerity. In communist countries, it was dangerous to be the first to stop applauding the dictator's speech. We've all seen movies of that, especially back during the days of Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin would make a speech and the applause would go on for 10 or 12 minutes. And no one had the courage to stop clapping, so it just went on and on and on. That's kind of where we are now. In addition, in a culture such as ours, which values the kind of emotional openness that is usually indistinguishable from psychobabble, vehemence is again to be expected. In short, the more you feel, as measured by the vehemence with which you express it, the better person you are and the safer from criticism. So it's about feelings, but you can't just have the feelings. You've got to vehemently express your feelings. And the more you do that, the safer you are from criticism. Quote, "No justice, no peace," was another very sinister slogan held up on placards during the demonstrations. This, in effect, gave carte blanche to those who believed the slogan to indulge in any violence they chose, all in the name of bringing about justice as defined by themselves. And since a state of perfect justice has never yet existed in the world, any more than has a free world free of sin, endless violence being the opposite of peace was being justified in advance. It seems then that we have entered an era of what might be called moral thuggery. It is, as ever, important not to exaggerate. We do not live in the worst times, We do not fear the midnight knock on the door if we express a heterodox idea. But there are substantial numbers of people who, in the name of their own moral outrage and sense of righteousness, would like to impose, or at least would not object to the imposition of a regime in which people did fear that midnight knock. We cannot assume that everyone yearns to let others breathe free. Okay, the next part of my foundation is this. Bye-bye Tucker. Fox, and this comes from a website called Raw Story, which is pretty far over on the left. And as I've mentioned before, I read the left, I read the right, I even read the New York Times. For no other reason, just to see what the other side is doing, or in the case of the New York Times, how big a fool they've made of themselves lately. So this is from Raw Story by a guy named Alex Henderson. And the headline is, Bye-bye Tucker. Fox News host loses multiple corporate advertisers following rants against Black Lives Matter. Although the far-right opinion hosts at Fox News often get high ratings, they can also cost the right-wing cable news outlet money when they start losing advertisers. And Tucker Carlson, one of our fellow broadcasters right here on the Point, right? Brian, Tucker, Rush.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the guy's name that comes after me every day? Sean.
Sean
yeah,
Hannity.
Sean, yeah.
Hannity.
Yeah. I kind of got to look out for these other guys, too, you know. I know they're probably looking out for me.
True.
Yeah. So Tucker has lost some major ones following his unhinged rants against Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd protesters. Unhinged rants. Media Matters reports that the advertisers have abandoned Carlson this week include T-Mobile, Smile Direct Club, Disney, Very and Papa John's Pizza. Remind me never to eat Papa John's Pizza. On Monday night, June 8, Carlson asserted that Black Lives Matter is definitely not about black lives. This is a rant. Yeah. But rather is an example of left-wing mobs that are out to cancel your rights. I think I've probably said the same thing right here on Tall Tales. But there's only one reason that I've said that, Real Joe Cruz.
Why is that, sir?
Because it's true.
Okay.
Yeah. If it weren't, I wouldn't have said it. And the following night, Carson ranted against a Sesame Street special that had an anti-racist message, which he saw as leftist indoctrination of children. Democrats, Carlson said on June 8, encourage theft and mayhem as if that will help. Advertising rates fell in half, and we need your help. Oh, I'm sorry. This is an appeal from Raw Story. Well, let me just read it. Let us make a small request. This is from Raw Story. The COVID crisis, they don't even know what the Wuhan virus is, has cut advertising rates in half, and we need your help. Like you, we here at Raw Story believe in the power of progressive journalism. Raw Story Readers Power, David K. Johnston's D.C. report, which we've expanded to keep watch in Washington, and on, some more self-laudatory things here. Okay, so that's the second item of the foundation, and here's the third item. Chaz protesters release the list of crazy demands. Abolish prisons, abolish police, close prisons, hire black doctors for black patients, give free college and housing to everybody. Now, you know what Chaz means, don't you, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, I do, sir.
Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, 6 blocks in Seattle, which have stated that they've removed themselves from American jurisdiction. Here we go. A group claiming to be behind the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, a 6-block area in Seattle where armed protesters have ousted police and seized control, have published a list of demands that amount to a strange mix of anarchy and socialism, with some having absolutely nothing to do with police reform. The Chaz Group's lengthy list of demands was published on Medium Tuesday and makes just one mention of George Floyd. This goes right back to what Tucker was saying. This is not about George Floyd. It's not about Black Lives Matter. And as I mentioned before, the issue is not the issue. The issue is the revolution. Rather than seeking justice for Floyd's family, the demands seek a wish list of anarchistic and socialist reforms, including the abolishment of the city's police department and its, quote, attached criminal justice apparatus, the end to all use of armed force, widespread wealth distribution, free college, and a bizarre requirement that hospitals employ, quote, Black doctors and nurses specifically to help care for Black patients. The Post's transcribers, and there's some what do you call the Twitter addresses here, broke down the demands into 4 categories: the justice system, health and human service, economics, and education. In credit to the people who feed Capitol Hill, this list of demands is neither brief nor simplistic, the Medium Post said. This is no simple request to end police brutality. We demand that the city council and the mayor, whoever that may be, implement these policy changes for the cultural and historical advancement of the city of Seattle and to ease the struggle of its peoples. Here are some of the items that follow on the list of justice system's demands. The Seattle Police Department and attached court system are beyond reform. The attached court system, beyond reform. We do not request reform. We demand abolition. We demand that the city council and mayor defund and abolish the Seattle Police Department and attached criminal justice apparatus. This means 100% of funding, including existing pensions for Seattle police. At an equal level of priority, we also demand that the city disallow the operations of ICE in the city of Seattle. We demand a retrial of all people of color currently serving a prison sentence for violent crime. Everybody who's in prison for violent crime, retrial by a jury of their peers in their community. We demand the abolition of imprisonment, generally speaking, but especially the abolition of both youth prisons and privately owned for-profit prisons. The last item on the criminal justice system list goes full-fledged socialist, stating, we demand that the funding previously used for Seattle police be directed into socialized health and medicine, free public housing, public education to decrease the average class size in city schools and increase teacher salaries, naturalization services for immigrants to the United States living here undocumented. Then they're not immigrants. We demand they be called undocumented because no person is illegal. General community development, etc. At this point in the Post, things get really zany as the demands stray away from any form of police or criminal justice reform. Under the economic section, the Post states, we demand the de-gentrification of Seattle, starting with rent control. We demand the restoration of city funding for arts and culture to reestablish the once rich local cultural identity of Seattle. We demand free college for the people of the state of Washington due to the overwhelming effect that education has on economic success. Under the Health and Human Services Education section, the demands continue to drift away from anything remotely related to police and criminal justice reform. We demand the hospital and care facilities of Seattle employ black doctors and nurses specifically to help care for black patients. Now, this would be because blacks are so much different from the other races that only a black doctor could properly treat them? We demand the people of Seattle seek out and proudly support black-owned businesses. Your money is our power and sustainability. We demand that thorough anti-bias training become a legal requirement for all jobs in the education system, as well as in the medical profession and in mass media. Chaz has caught the attention of President Trump, who referred to the protesters as domestic terrorists and ugly anarchists in a pair of Wednesday tweets. The president also called on Governor Jay Inslee and Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan to take back the city from protesters. Okay, so that's Chaz. If you hadn't heard about Chaz before, there's a neighborhood in Seattle called Capitol Hill. So Chaz is the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, 6 blocks. We've talked before, we're on the threshold of a violent insurrection in the United States. All in the name of George Floyd. It's, of course, obviously completely pretextual. And people who, the so-called demonstrators, basically are dupes because they're providing cover for the rioting, the arson, and the anarchy that's going on in Seattle, not to mention the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. So as not to be left out here on Guam, I am at this moment proclaiming the Constitutional Operations Zone. And I am sitting right smack dab in the middle of the Constitutional Operations Zone. So I think you already know what the tenets of this zone are. We are not sovereign here in the Constitutional Operations Zone. We are not independent. We look at the Constitution of the United States as our governing document, as well as the laws of Guam. Anarchy is forbidden within the Constitutional Operations Zone. Nonsense like the pretext of advancing the so-called Black Lives Matter cause as cover for what amounts to Marxist revolutionary activity is not going to be blessed here. It's not going to be embraced. So it's fair warning, if you have any ideas like that, that's what Tall Tales is operating here out of the Constitutional Operations Zone. Let's take a short break.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumon, or call 646-1463.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team. conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So from the Constitutional Operations Zone, we go to today's card. And just let me read some of the totals here on the card. It's June 12th. The count for Janella is 27. Tina is back to 1. And for the Constitutional Operations Zone, today is day 1. And this is what I've got on the card. I've got Troy versus Janella. I've got Tina versus Emergency. I've got Joan Uggan-Chotfris versus Irrelevance. Jim Moylan versus Frank Miller. Woke Jim versus Minneapolis. Alabama versus Godzanero. Tidigui Nelson Lee versus Therese Terlahi, which I'm actually going to do as part of the Tina Rose Munya Barnes countdown. I've got Starbucks versus BLM. And that's probably as far as I'm going to get today. So starting out with Troy versus Janella, today for Janella, it's day 27 since the Crystal Paco pronouncement that Janella did not have to apologize as ordered by the Lieutenant Governor because Carlo Branch's apology was sufficient. And I can tell you that it has been 27 days since that time that, and Janella has not muted any microphones. She has not cut off any journalists in mid-sentence at the governor's press conference. Next item here is Tina versus Emergency. And you recall that I started this countdown because on May 30, Tina called the legislature into emergency session. And she announced that the 3 bills on the agenda, which she placed on the agenda rather than them being placed on the agenda by the body, did not require public hearings because she had waived the public hearing requirement pursuant to 2 GCA section 2103, which says no bill may be passed by the legislature unless it has received a public hearing, except that when the presiding officer certifies that emergency conditions exist involving danger to the public health or safety, the public hearing may be required, may be waived. So Tina waived the public hearing requirement for 3 bills that would provide for double pay for Government of Guam employees. I've still been trying to figure out how those bills had any impact on a danger to the public health or safety. And I guess I was not the only one, because the next day the legislature went into that emergency session, and one of the first things that happened was that Joe San Augustine, whose committee had jurisdiction over the bills, and who was a co-sponsor, as you were the prime sponsor of one of the bills, said that the legislature should adjourn till June 1 so that a public hearing could be held on those bills. Danger. Emergency conditions exist involving danger to the public health or safety. Well, we did a countdown, and we got up to, what was it, 22 days, and then Tina did it again. Once again, she was our canary in the coal mine, finding an emergency condition that was a danger to the public health or safety. And I have an item that could easily fit on the card involving Senators Klitzkie, Nelson, Lee, and Therese Terlahi. And here's how it goes. This ran on KOAM last night. Wednesday saw another round of fights at the legislature. So when I call this the card, I'm not my usual exaggeration or facetiousness, right, Real Joe Cruz?
It's the truth, sir.
Yeah. Wednesday saw another round of fights at the Guam legislature. There was late-night action as Bill 367, legislation to provide financial aid to local families, hit session floor, introduced by Senator Amanda Shelton, and after public hearing requirements were waived for Bill 367. So Bill 367, which provides for financial aid to local families, danger, health, safety. It was introduced by Shelton, and then she went on to say, "We're just playing games here tonight. Unfortunately, that's what it seems like," said Senator Shelton. And then going on, the legislature would create Ajuda y Mangafa, or Help for Families program. $500 payments would go to eligible families with young adults, students, and disabled individuals that may have been overlooked in local and federal stimulus programs. The bill proposes tapping local funds to pay for the program. That is, until BBMR and DOA, during the Committee of the Whole, indicated there wasn't enough local funding. As Gomer Pyle, USMC, was heard to say, "Surprise, surprise, there wasn't enough local funding." As a result, Republican Minority Leader Senator Tello Klitzkie introduced an amendment scrapping the local funding options and instead incorporated language that CARES Act funding, quote, may be appropriated. Her amendment failed, but the bill's author introduced a similar one. Quote, "So in addition to the funding sources that were in the original bill, we add the CARES Act funding, which Mr. Carlson, the director of BBMR, shared with us this evening would be the sources of the funding." And then we go on, and this is from the reporter. "We should note the governor has said in a lawsuit was even cited during last night's session that the legislature cannot appropriate federal funds, which would include CARES Act funding. The debate led to verbal sparring on whether the bill was even needed." And here we go. Everybody here knows, Mr. Chair, this would have been Joe St. Augustine and the Committee of the Whole, that they could do this program tomorrow. They could have done it 3 months ago. They could have done it any time they wanted. If they're going to use CARES money, they don't need this bill, said Senator Therese Terlahi. But we're here trying to go through this charade. What is Therese Terlahi, trying to be a substitute host on Tall Tales? Using vocabulary like that? But we're here trying to go through this charade of we're going to pass a bill and says it's CARES Act money they get to use. Senator Talina Nelson said, there were several things brought up in this debate, brought up by our colleagues, and that was an opinion of one of our colleagues. But there's also another one almost saying that this bill is not needed. In essence, this bill is worthless. And Mr. Chair, that's a difference of opinion as well, because unfortunately we have said, and this set off a flurry of interjections and interruptions between Senators Teitigui, Nelson, and raging Biscoe Lee, with Chairman Joe San Augustine finally saying, ladies, my colleagues, next time I have to gavel down, I'm going to call you out of order, and I'm going to have the Sergeant at Arms do what he has to do. Sergeant at Arms can exclude an unruly member from the chamber. That's me saying that, not the column. Senator Shelton's bill was moved to the voting file. So here we are again. Tina Rose Munya Barnes has found that there's a danger to public health and safety, so they can take up a bill that was just recently introduced that would provide money for families. Oh, that's a nice idea, but it doesn't go to danger to health and family. And of course, the other dimension is this. CARES Act funding is not subject to appropriation by the legislature. Now, I suppose it's asking a lot for me to sit here and say, you folks in the legislature kind of need to know what it is that you're doing. And you need to find out before you start dealing with bills. I have in front of me a case called Russell Wong versus Doris Kamina. It was decided on January 24, 1978. This is not something new. Petitioners petitioned for writ of mandate directed against Doris Kamina, director of BBMR, came on regularly for hearing by the court. The petitioner was represented by blah, blah, blah. The court, having reviewed the record and having heard the argument of counsel, etc., let's see. The court has jurisdiction. Section 1423J of Title 48 U.S. Code is paramount to local legislation. 1423J, Title 48, is part of the Organic Act. It's paramount to local legislation and provides that the United States Congress can make appropriations directly to the government of Guam, where these appropriations or grants completely fund a specific purpose without the need of local funding, and where the appropriation or grant does not provide for local legislative control, there is no authority for the Guam legislature to assume the responsibility for reappropriating these funds. So, you know, you can do bills all day long about what you're going to do with the CARES Act. But if the governor doesn't want to do it, she doesn't have to. On the other hand, if the governor wants to take CARES Act money and use it in accordance with the CARES Act itself, she can, and there's nothing you guys over there at the legislature can do about it, except what you did with Bill 367. Fight and bicker. And almost put on a little program to show the voting public that you don't know what you're doing. Until Therese Terlahi comes along and says, let's not engage in this charade anymore. But the reason that I advance this on the card is, once again, Tina Rose Munya Barnes, the Speaker of the Legislature, should be divested of her ability to declare emergencies dealing with health and safety that would allow her to obviate the necessity of a public hearing on a bill. This is an evil. And she's shown us 4 times now that she's done it. The first 3 times, as I've described before, waive public hearings. The author of one of the bills said we need to have a public hearing. Fine emergency that. And this one, Therese Terlahi and I point out that you don't even need the bill, that the governor could do this on her own. So where's the emergency? You know, when someone repeatedly misuses, I was going to say her authority, but I caught myself in time, Real Joe Cruz. When Tina repeatedly misuses their authority, that authority should be taken away from her. So some right-thinking senator ought to introduce a bill and change section, let's see what section that was here. Section 2 GCA 2103 alpha. That should be changed so that only the body on a majority vote could waive the public hearing requirement. We can't trust Tina Rose Mooney Barnes with that authority anymore. Okay, so much for Tina's countdown. So our countdown is back to 1. Next item on the card is Joan Ugan-Chatfors versus Irrelevance. Oh, I like that song.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
If you've ever struggled for breath, you know what a scary experience it is. Whether you have asthma, emphysema, COPD, lung cancer, or another respiratory illness, the right medical treatment makes all the difference. GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic has the latest technology and respiratory equipment, staffed by world-class pulmonologists. Make an appointment today with GRMC's Pulmonology Clinic and start breathing easier. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Mescla, Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Agagna and Tumon are now open for your dining experience. Necessary precautions and safety protocols were assessed in order to maintain a clean and sanitized area for you and your family while dining in. Join Mescla in Agagna and Tumon locations for a true taste of Guam.
So here we are back again. Did I hear a few bars of that song Back Home Again in Indiana, Real Joe Cruz?
You did, sir.
You know, when you get old, you have a license to tell the same joke more than once.
That's true.
Because people say, well, I guess he forgot that he told us that joke before, right?
That's fine, sir.
Yeah, so I'm going to use my license again. You know, Indiana, I've been to some really exotic places, Real Joe Cruz.
Really, sir?
Yeah, I've been to Indonesia. I've been to India. I've even been to Indiana. So I was peeking at Facebook here during the break, and I noticed Janice Wong, who almost always is here first. Janice Wong.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, cool. Good for Janice Wong. And Janice tells us, favorite way to end my day in Arizona. So hello in Arizona, Janice Wong. We're glad you're with us every day. I notice you're there, first person every day. We got a couple of, like James and a couple of the other guys that would like to be first, but you got to get up pretty early in the morning to be Janice, I think. Okay, and Walter Gray is here, and Ishmael and Mark S. Cruz. Mark wants to make his mark. And Andrew Camacho, quote, the silver lining of recent events is the clear evidence of the results of progressive policies and groupthink. That's for sure, Andrew. And then Lynn McAfee has a pretty poignant comment. Virtue signaling is just verification that today's culture measures the value of the individual self by the level of approval of the mob. That's profound. I'm going to repeat that, Lynn. Virtue signaling is just verification that today's culture measures the value of the individual self by the level of approval of the mob. Yeah, I hope I'm going to write that down. I'm going to try to incorporate that into the program somewhere, Real Joe Cruz. The individual self is not confident enough to measure themselves, but seeks that shallow and fickle approval from society. And then John Delzell, do the black Chaz doctors have to be any good or just happen to have dark skin color? What shade is acceptable? Well, if you sign up for identity politics, and I've explained this before, nothing matters except identity. So there are no objective facts. There's no reality. There's no such thing as critical thinking. Banish the thought. So no matter what the event is or what the subject is, the only thing is important is you determine what groups the actors are in. And by doing that, you can identify the oppressor and the oppressed. The oppressor is is extremely easy to find. He'll be the white male, white European male. Better even if he's Christian. And if he's straight, man, it's a slam dunk. And then any one of a number of other 25 or so identity groups would be the oppressed. The gender challenged people of different colors, etc. So in answer to your question, John Delzell, do the black Chaz doctors have to be any good or just happen to have dark skin? Yes, that's it. Whether or not they're good doctors, immaterial if you sign up for identity politics. And Janice chimes in and says, what are the chances the feds are using this opportunity to mark all their faces for everybody? I'm sorry. Yeah, she says mark all their faces. Well, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Janice, but both Amazon and another company have said that they are not going to sell face recognition equipment to police departments for 1 year. Because if the police had this facial recognition software and they ran it through a crowd, then they could tell who the looters and the arsonists were. So, Amazon, they're going to, Bill, what's his name? Jeff Bezos, he's right in there. He wants to be recognized as the richest social justice warrior in the world. Okay, going on to Edgardo Azarin Blancafor. Send Tina Munya Barnes to the Chaz. Those people are starving. Yeah, maybe Tina could be the speaker over at the Chaz. Ken Brown, I'm starting a Bob Klitzkie show. Which party on my Facebook news watch? Excuse me. Ken Brown, I'm starting a Bob Klitzkie show watch party on Facebook news feed. Good for you, Ken. Rico, good afternoon, Judge Bob and Joe, Real Joe Cruz, and Tall Tales Posse. And, of course, we'll always have, as Ray says, we'll always have Paris. So that's the Facebook rundown for now. I got just a couple of seconds here to cover Joan Uggan-Chotras versus Irrelevance before the big halftime show. Joan Uggan-Chotras, I guess the only remaining question here is this. Is Joan Ogun Chotfris going to get a Pulitzer Prize for journalism for this story that ran on KUAM on Thursday night, detailing how Kelly Marsh Titano wrote a letter to the lieutenant governor asking him to work on island beautification. Boy, I'll tell you, you talk about breaking news. When I read this story, I had to sit down. It just really grabbed me. So we talked about that the other day. And then yesterday I talked a little bit about Jim Moylan versus Frank Miller. A little workup on one of my favorite movies, High Noon. And I mentioned that if Jim were going to do a sequel of High Noon, when Frank Miller got off the train at High Noon in Hadleyville and came walking down the street with his 3 thugs, Jim Moylan, as Will Kane, would walk out into the street to take him on, and as soon as Frank Miller came into view, Jim would have to say, "Oh, hey, Frank, time out. I forgot to load my gun." Kind of like Jim didn't have his amendments ready when his Bill 9 came to the floor. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president talks policing. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump says he'll soon issue an executive order on police reform that will include better training, especially on ways to de-escalate situations that could turn deadly. At a roundtable meeting in Dallas, he called efforts to defund police departments.
An extreme agenda which we won't go for, that will produce only more poverty, more crime, more suffering.
The president also sat down for an exclusive interview with Fox's Harris Faulkner, who asked about George Floyd's death in police custody.
But when you see an event like that with the more than 8 minutes of horror, that's 8 minutes really of horror, it's a disgrace. And then people start saying, well, are all police like that?
The president said most cops are professional. A 36-hour-long manhunt for a gunman who shot and wounded a Northern California sheriff's deputy and is suspected of killing another man has ended in a shootout.
This has been confirmed by both the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office and the Paso Robles Police Department. They do have the suspect listed as down, the suspect down, and several officers are wounded in a gunfight with the suspect.
That's reporter Dave Alley of Fox 11 in Santa Barbara, California. The San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office confirms that suspect Mason Lira is dead. 2 other officers have been injured. Louisville, Kentucky, banning the use of controversial no-knock warrants and has named that new ordinance for Breonna Taylor. She was the woman shot to death by Louisville police officers who burst into her home in March in a fruitless drug search. It's been 2 years since the first summit meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. Now North Korea marking the anniversary by vowing to build up its military force against perceived U.S. threats, and says there'd be little reason for a personal relationship between Kim and the president if Washington persists with sanctions. America is listening to Fox News.
Oro magunom, matana lom suman kumin healthy and niceness. Karingin kum niki mit saye nakshi kisin jing kanyan fashil klan ma saying in wang takani and wang na pashali matana lom suman. Akayakom is mongle ashosh kamofal esukumines be vitamin nasum. Karingin kum sifena in niceness in dia apashali. Oba dukungom somnayen, tiakal motom, infem, inwelum, eaknas nasien komatakian. Inaksa fie akola. Arela emergency contact list lom, aroy nash mo yaknas nas kaonlo in lom suman, nakarangin in jash mit mas in lom suman. Aro makuno minako ye aknas nasien kuam in nasnas aim safe. Tanak manas, matana in lom suman. Message saying ye masin manyetlu, Micronesian Resource Center at Choice Broadcasting.
There are new worries about surging coronavirus cases.
Arizona asked hospitals to activate their emergency plans this week due to an increase in cases. But Governor Doug Ducey says they can handle it. They have enough masks, ventilators, and hospital beds. He also says this can in part be attributed to an increase in testing.
What's most important is where are we today in hospital capacity. That was the reason for the stay home, stay healthy, stay connected order, to slow that spread.
The state saw an increase of more than 1,400 cases in just one day. Florida's Department of Health confirmed nearly 1,700 new COVID cases Thursday, the highest number reported in the state in one day since the pandemic began. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Utah now pausing its reopening plans because of virus spikes. Governor Gary Herbert saying,
"We see the rates rise and trying to understand the data and what it informs us to do as a policy. We want to have the economy open up too. We know that that's a big, serious issue, and there's other health concerns if we have a closed economy."
Utah's mortality rate from the virus is among the lowest in the country. Growing support in Congress to rename military bases, honoring Confederate generals.
An annual defense policy and spending bill could include a provision requiring the Pentagon to change the names of military bases named for Confederate leaders. The Senate Armed Services Committee has advanced an amendment doing so. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi suggests the House will do the same.
The American people know these names have to go.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says he'll wait to see legislation.
I'll wait to see what comes out of the NDAA. Not opposed to it, though.
President Trump has said his administration will not consider renaming bases like Fort Bragg and Fort Hood. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
As we emerge from the effects of the global pandemic, Security Title is rethinking how to best serve our customers. With our houses clean and closets reorganized, here's a reminder to take a look at the title to your house and other real estate. Is your trust in order? Is it time to update your wills? Do you have the best interest rate available on your home? As we get back to work, there's no better time to revisit your most valuable asset, your property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Horizon Properties can empathize with individual property owners during this trying time. The last thing you should worry about is collecting rent or sending a repairman to your property. With their web-hosted property management system, Horizon can reach out to tenants, vendors, and owners alike and maintain the current prohibition requirements. Let Horizon Properties take care of it all. Help flatten the curve by remaining safe at home. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792 or visit horizonpropertiesguam.com. Horizon Properties, always there for you.
Half a day. This is Michelle from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, back again, Tall Tales, after that beautiful halftime show that we've all come to know and love so well. How many cannon blasts do we have there, Real Joe Cruz?
I think it was 11, sir.
11, okay. So we now know the difference between a 21-gun salute and 3 rifle volleys, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir, we do.
Yeah. Okay, I noticed that during the break, Pam Duvall signed up. And she said that she's noticed that some of the roadsides in Jigo have been cleaned. And she said, must be an election coming up. But, Pam, there is an election coming up, but our mayor is not running for re-election. And I suspect that what you're seeing is clearing between Payless and from Payless south towards Dadido on the east side of the island. This has nothing to do with our mayor. This is the government under the auspices of the Joint Region Marianas clearing the space alongside the highway to build a fence. So they're going to make about a 40-foot wide swath through the boonies there and build a fence all the way around Anderson South. And that's why you're seeing all of that clearing going on there. You'll notice that there's still plenty of boonies plenty of jungle up on the road where that clearing doesn't reach. So it would be nice if our mayor would clean up the roadsides and make it look nice, but maybe the next mayor will. Okay, I've got, let's see, probably another Joe, right? No, it's our Carl. Our Carl, did you want to comment on that dynamite piece of reporting that Joan Uggan Chotfris shared with us the other day on the letter that Kelly Marsh Titano wrote to the lieutenant governor? Is that I know that's really important. I thought maybe you wanted to get in on that.
Actually, I just wanted to add a little bit of the information about what we see going on in the States, about this autonomous region and just the far left efforts going on, in Black Lives Matters and Antifa. I just wanted to add a historical note. I find it very ironic that many of these people in Black Lives Matters, you've mentioned the 3 founders, the 3 female founders were communists. They're Marxist. And Antifa is clearly Marxist, their leadership and many of the followers. And I find it ironic that they're uniting around this racial issue when the man they're following was a racist. There was a book written by Nathaniel Weil, W-E-Y-L. He's a former communist, and it was printed in 1979. But the title of the book is Karl Marx Racist. And read just a short portion of this about his racism. Marx had a racial vision that might be interesting to his modern-day black supporters. In a letter to Engels, in reference to his socialist political competitor, Ferdinand Lassalle, Marx wrote, "It is now completely clear to me that he, as is proved by his cranial formation and his hair, descends from the N-word." It's not really the N-word, but it's a word that was used for blacks that I don't know if some people might find it irritating, who had joined Moses' exodus from Egypt, assuming that his mother or his grandmother on the paternal side had not inherited, interbred with a N-word. And this is the N-word. Now this union of Judaism and Germanism with a basic and another N-word, but it's the earlier version, substance must produce a peculiar product. Engels shared a Marxist racial philosophy. In 1887, Paul Lafarge, who was Marx's son-in-law, was a candidate for council seat in the Paris district and contained a zoo. Engels claimed that Lafarge had 1/8 or 1/12 N-word blood. And, these were racist people. And just one quick other historical note. In a letter to the Russian scholar P.V. Anenkov, Marx defended slavery. He wrote in briefly in this letter, as for slavery, there is no need to speak of its bad aspects. The only thing requiring explanation is the good side of slavery. I do not mean indirect slavery, the slavery of the proletariat. I mean direct slavery of the blacks in Suriname, in Brazil, in the southern regions of North America. And he goes on in this letter to defend using blacks as slaves as a part of growing the worldwide free trade. So Marx, it's ironic that the man these people idolized was an out-and-out racist.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that little historical note.
Well, I'm glad you did, Carl, and it's kind of consistent with the whole Marxist ideal that there isn't anything but hypocrisy underlying the whole thing. That all of the, what we're seeing in the States is George Floyd, may he rest in peace, is just a pretext. That the folks that are making all the noise and don't give a nickel for George Floyd. It's just a pretext for anarchy, looting, arson, and as I keep saying, the revolution or the insurrection that we see growing right under our noses, but because of our willingness to virtue signal instead of think, so many people who ought to know better are not only condoning it, but praising it. So thanks for that contribution, Carl.
Yeah, just a little historical note that I found really interesting and really ironic. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Carl. And let's see, it must be time for another Joe. Oh, it's Tina. Okay. Hey, Tina, I'm really sorry I missed you yesterday.
That's okay, sir. I just, have a question. I've been looking around the internet and stuff, and I actually sort of stumbled on a professor named Shelby Steele. I was just wondering if you were familiar with him and have read his book.
I have stumbled across his name, but I can't put it into a context right now. I think maybe just yesterday, but go ahead, Tina.
Well, he has this book called White Guilt. So I saw, a lecture about his book a little bit, and I really do want to get his book. I can't get my hands on it right now, but I'd like to read it. But very, very smart man. He is a Black American or African American, but very intelligent man. And just listening to him, he's kind of got what's going on that's been going on. And I was just wondering if you had listened to him and his philosophy of the things that are actually going on with racism and Black America right now.
I guess I better, Tina.
And yes, and he's a conservative, and when I was coming up, I was so Democrat. I don't know why. I guess it was just one of those things, and then kind of got a little tired of listening to the Democratic Party and the things that they believe in and things. And as I got older, I kind of matured, so I went independent. I'm like, okay, I'm going to register independent because I'm not on anyone's side. So now, in light of all the stuff that's going on and all the research, like I've been doing with like the Shelby Steele and Thomas Sowell and a lot of those professors and philosophers who actually happen to be Black and Black American and their take on everything, I'm a proud Republican. I need to go change my party. So I guess I'm a libertarian.
Okay, well, good for you, Tina. I think it was...
I woke up.
Well, good, Tina. I think it was Winston Churchill who said that if you're not a liberal when you're 20, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative when you're 40, you have no brain.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's I finally woke up with, in light of all that happened. I mean, that's only the good, tiny, micro thing that happened in all of this.
Sure.
That I feel. Anyways, that's all I have to say, sir.
You mentioned Thomas Sowell. I have read a few of his books, and the guy is just brilliant. There's just no getting around it.
And Shelby Steele, sir, is around that type of thing. And very, he was a mixed race African American, and he grew up in the 60s. I believe now he's maybe closer to 80 something, but he's also a twin, and his brother is very brilliant as well. He's also professor for stereotyping. So I'm looking into Claude Steele too, which is his twin brother. Very brilliant. Thomas Sowell, all of them. And it's so sad that I had to find out this way. With all the things that Black Americans should be proud of, why wasn't any of this mentioned?
Yeah, well, when you talk about white guilt, there are some white people who should be very, very guilty. Okay, good observation, Tina. I'm glad we got you on.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
And as you go along with Shelby Steele, please share with us as you get into the book, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye, Tina. Okay, I got another Joe, and I've got Senator Chris Duenas in the green room. Another Joe. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Bob. So I heard you invoking my name, and you better be careful what you ask for. You might get me. So, all right. So, in regards to the statues being torn down, for the moment, I don't have any problem with it, except for General Robert Lee, because I think he was very instrumental in surrendering at the right time and allowing for peace to rebuild the United States. So I kind of have an issue with the Robert Lee statue being torn down. But maybe, I don't know, if they could have a statue of both Lee and Grant, then that would actually emphasize, my interests. But they say if you don't learn from history, you might be doomed to repeat it, and meaning that you're going to cause a lot more heartache and hardship and grief to fellow Americans than is necessary. But I don't know. Do you think it's necessary? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you should take a poll or something if it's necessary to go after Robert E. Lee. But
I know a lot about Robert E. Lee. I've been to Lexington, Virginia, a couple of times, which is the location of Washington and Lee University. And after the Civil War, Lee was the president of Washington and Lee University, which is a pretty good university. And Robert E. Lee, if anything, was a gentleman. Was a good soldier. He was a West Point graduate. He fought in the Mexican War on our side, and when the war broke out at Fort Sumter, Charleston, South Carolina, Lee had to decide.
Sorry, background noise.
Oh, which drive-through are you in, another Joe?
No, just near the road. I'm sorry.
So, where was I? Robert E. Lee.
Sumter, Fort Sumter.
Yeah. Back in those days, it was the United States, and people had very strong allegiance to their individual state. He was offered the command of the Union Army, and he turned it down. His loyalties were with Virginia rather than with the Union. He was not he wasn't a slaver. That's what drew him in. He had a particular kind of patriocy that drew him to where he was. So if you know all about him, you could kind of understand what he was about. And unfortunately, he is now the victim of what has been described as presentism. So presentism means that you as of today, you look back in history, and anything that you see in history that doesn't match up with your standards today is bad and must be destroyed. As an example, Netflix is not going to run Gone with the Wind anymore, which is just absolutely stupid. Because, you know, if you want to know what slavery was about, it's a movie that is about slavery. So the left, I think the best parallel I could make for the left is what the Taliban did when they took over in Afghanistan. There were some historic Buddhist statues in Afghanistan that are a couple thousand years old, you know, kind of things that people came from all over the world to see. But of course, the Taliban were not Buddhists, they're Muslims. So they ruined all these statues because they didn't fit into the Muslims' worldview today. And that's kind of where we are in the United States. And you got to wonder who's next. Washington, Jefferson, Madison, even in New York, even Christopher Columbus, you know? So this attempt to rewrite history by going back and destroying everything in the past that doesn't meet with the left's standards today is stupid and counterproductive because it erases that which they want to teach about. So that's my 2 cents worth, Real Joe Cruz. I mean, excuse me, another Joe. My bad.
Yep. Yeah, it's just some people they want to make a big production of all kinds of stuff. I don't know that it's necessary. We know the issues. We know that there's a need to be look into police reform, and you know. So anyway, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob, and we'll see what happens with regards to this. Was it the next step in letting people go about freely? You know, especially since there's going to be a lot of campaigning and election this in a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks for your time, Uncle Bob, and I'll just keep listening.
Always a pleasure, another Joe. Okay, so on the line, waiting patiently in the green room, is former Senator Chris Duenas. Good afternoon, Chris.
My pleasure, Your Honor, Judge, Honorable Marine, Senator, my favorite talk show host. You know, I got to tell you, when Real Joe Cruz answered the phone, I said, Real Joe, I deeply apologize. It's Friday. And he said, no, Chris. Remember, hang in there. Everything's going to be fine. Just stay positive. So we've come to that day that we all hate, Bob. So
yeah, I know.
Man, you got one heck of a producer there, Bob.
I do indeed, and it's as hard on him as it is on me. It's just a load that we have to share over the weekend.
Well, I'm glad I got to at least participate on Friday, and I'll suffer over the weekend. But we'll suffer together. But you know, what a shame. One of my favorite cities. Actually, have family over in Washington State, and I really like visiting Seattle, especially in the summer, taking in a game down at the ballpark, watching the Mariners, and it's a beautiful city, really. It's a shame what's happening there, and I wanted to draw a parallel and see if you might agree with my assessment. I call this segment what it's really all about, and you've been kind of putting out the proper analysis of this takeover. I think they call it Chaz or some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to use my own comparison, Bob. Say, for example, a large group of conservatives just went to the nation's capital and surrounded the House of Representatives, and they only had one demand. The only demand that they put forward as conservatives was to immediately repeal the law allowing for abortion and the murdering of innocent lives, which is well documented, millions and millions of innocent lives.
Certainly.
How fast do you think the city and liberals and everybody else would descend and disperse that mob?
Absolutely.
So the reason why I draw the parallel kind of, Bob, in terms of the standard which is applied. You know, it's amazing because, once again, as we all know and as you've articulated eloquently, a number of times, particularly with this crazy takeover of a block in Seattle by this mob, you know, it has nothing to do with George Floyd. It's so well organized. With the barriers, with the quasi-government as crazy and unorganized, somewhat as it is from what some honest reporters are reporting, but still organized nonetheless, with food provisions and the like. The craziest thing about it is we know already it's the Marxism, it's really the revolution. And George Floyd, this issue of George Floyd has nothing to do with it. You know, the reason why I wanted to use the at least one of the three top killers of persons of color, abortion. We all know that
right.
That's well documented, particularly those in broken families, particularly young black women in poverty. The whole reason why Planned Parenthood exists, let's just cut to the chase. It's not about Planned Parenthood. It's for abortion. They absolutely scream whenever, if one penny is defunded from them, from the federal government, to carry out their mission of basically aborting and killing babies. The fact of the matter is that probably ranks as the number one killer of persons of color. I would imagine probably this ranking, maybe not in this order, but the second would be black-on-black violence. You know, I noticed, Bob, they're taking all of these cop shows off of TV. I wonder if they're going to remove the first 48. I don't know if you've had a chance to take in that show once in a while.
I'm a Law and Order kind of guy. I go home every night and watch Law and Order. They better not touch Law and Order, I'll tell you that.
I'm there with you. I watch the old reels on 38 and at night sometimes if I'm not too sleepy, and I'm definitely a Law and Order guy as well. But I catch 48 hours every once in a while. The first 48.
Okay.
You know, I mean, this is not a biased or anything else. I mean, all you have to do is watch one episode or two episodes.
Sure, I watch it.
90% of the cases there inner city, predominantly dealing with drugs, burglary, theft, other types of violence, is black-on-black violence. And the third, I would say, like I said, not in any particular order, is most of these, like DC and other crazy places, with policies that basically continue to allow for failing schools and the inability of, particularly of minorities in poverty, to have a chance at making a go at a decent life by having the foundation of a good education. And you know, Bob, I think you would share this observation with me. None of these people, these loony left liberals, want to ever even start talking or address these things because they're too hard, they're too complicated, and frankly, they just don't want to do it. If they could get another George Floyd tomorrow, they'd be just ecstatic.
Yeah. Yeah, rabble-rousers only want to rabble-rouse. They don't want to build anything, fix anything, make anything better. It's obviously the object is to tear things down. I just hope that President Trump's campaign, when the dust settles and we finally realize that this Wuhan virus is predominantly a joke, if we do proper protocols and do what we're supposed to do, we can go back. We should just go back to normal, like many other countries, Japan and others have done, and monitor this thing and implement whatever needs to be implemented as we go. Hopefully we get into a swing of a decent campaign this summer and into the fall. I just hope their campaign really zeroes in and is able to, you know, put out enough advertisement to expose all of this hypocrisy and all of what this is really all about, so that we can at least get 4 more years of President Trump. You know, I think you and I agree. There's things here and there that, you know, are a put off and things like that. But if Biden gets elected,
I know you frequent trips to the States. I don't know. I might have to curtail some of my travel to see family.
Yeah, it would be, well, if Biden weren't won the election, the real question would be who would actually be the president, who would actually be calling the shots.
Right.
Because he's too old and dense to actually even make a pretext of it.
I agree, Bob. I think that's why, at least in the midst of all this madness, when there is some political analysis, the heaviest decision that campaign has to make is who's going to be the number two, because I think that really is that might determine a lot for Democrats and progressives going forward.
Right. Hey, Chris, I got to go.
Number one is Looney. All right, hey, take care, Bob. Have a great weekend.
Got to go to the seventh inning stretch. Thanks a lot for calling. Always a pleasure. Okay, we're going to break for the seventh inning stretch, and then I've got Shepard and Frenchie in the green room.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont, or call 646-1463.
As we stand up to coronavirus by standing back with social distancing, Bank Pacific reminds you that you can come to the bank without going to the bank. Use many of our other delivery platforms like online banking at bankpacific.com, accessing cash at our ATMs, shopping with our debit cards. For businesses, we have secure cash and check drop windows, and we are employing a new smarter mobile app with remote deposit capture in the next few weeks. We're all in this together, and together we will win. Bank Pacific. Brothers put branches, we place roots. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Call 646-7616 or 777-7792. You can also visit them at horizonpropertiesguam.com.
So, you know, Real Joe Cruz, I'm a little surprised that none of our callers have commented on that breaking story from Joan Uggan-Chatras about Kelly Marsh Titano.
They're probably still in shock, sir.
Probably.
Could be.
Yeah. I think I was listening on the Ray Gibson show this morning. You guys were talking about a poll, right?
Oh yeah, the poll on the senators.
The 15 incumbents, yes, and how
35th, yeah.
How they were rated, right?
Yes, sir.
Number one, I think, was Jim Moylan, right?
Yes, sir.
Where did Kelly Marsh Titano come in?
All the way at the bottom.
Wow, even with that good press she got from Joan Uggan?
Yeah. Almost inconceivable.
It is. Boy, I don't know how she's going to move up. A press like that didn't do it for her.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Okay. Well, I got Shep here on line one. Good afternoon, Shep.
Good afternoon to you, Bob. Good afternoon. I just tuned in, and I heard you saying something about Gone with the Wind. They're not going to stream Gone with the Wind anymore. I know in Hollywood there must be a couple of dozen movies that concentrate on the Civil War time and slavery. What is it about Gone with the Wind that makes it so special that they don't want to stream it? Do you know, or maybe one of your callers can call in and explain it to us?
Well, one of the things I understand is that Hattie McDaniel, where is that beep? Is that you or me, Shepard?
I'm sorry. I will kill that. And there you go.
Okay, much
Sorry
better.
about that.
Thank you. Yeah, Hattie McDaniel, who played the maid, you'll recall, and won an Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actress. And needless to say, the first time that a black American had ever won that award. But when she came to the Academy Awards banquet, she was not allowed to be seated in the room. They had to make a special arrangement for her somewhere else. and that when the movie was being shot, she was not able to eat with the cast.
That is horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I think, you know, if one were to look at it objectively, if I were Ray Tenorio, I would say there's a teachable moment there, and it doesn't have anything to do with quick draw.
Absolutely, absolutely. I also something that caught my ear even more so, closer to my heart, was this. It comes and goes. Is this Christopher Columbus bashing? And I know you have a far-reaching, wide international radio audience, but I'd like to consider myself your token Italiano, and it particularly pains me because this man. Well, first of all, you know, at the turn of the previous century, Italians weren't even considered white. And the beatings and the treatment they got along with the Irish was just horrible. But, you know, these people today, they're not up in arms. But the Christopher, you know, when he sailed, the world was thought to be flat. And then he was supposed to meet his, demise when he reached the end, and there were supposed to maybe serpents. Who knows? So he displayed a level of courage to this day, which is, you know, it's hard to challenge. It's kind of like the original astronauts when they're getting on the top of the rocket. Maybe they make it, maybe they don't. That's courage. These are things we should be celebrating. We could use a lot more of in today's society, which is, which is the courage of Columbus.
Exactly, and and what he's being beat up for is his treatment of Native Americans, which I think is poorly recorded at best. But of course, the assumption is that he was a white man and he came to North America, and everybody knows that white people stole North America from the indigenous people. Therefore, he's in the wrong group and his statue has to be destroyed. But interestingly enough, Governor Cuomo said that was wrong.
That's nice. I would, like I said, I think it's wrong, and if there are things to be learned from history, we should learn from history, not destroy history and make pretend it didn't happen. But anyways, just I'm gonna when it comes to the cocktail hour tonight, I'm gonna make a special toast to my man from Milan, Christopher Columbus.
Good for you. Very
good. All right, you take it easy, Bob.
Yeah. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
What do you think of that, Fredo? I mean, Real Joe Cruz.
I'm not no Cuomo, sir.
Okay. Shepard, our producer here, the Real Joe Cruz, has an Italian great-grandfather, right? Real Joe Cruz?
Yes.
Yeah. He's from Reggio Calabria.
Yes, correct.
Way down on the bottom of Italy, down in, not on the toe, but right across the street from Messina, Sicily.
You're right, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the problems that he has when he's doing the sound effect is to hold his hand in the right Italian-type position, right, Real Joe Cruz?
You got it, sir. Forget about it.
Okay, so let's see. I've got, well, we're really ethnic here. Next we've got Frenchie, and then we've got R. James after that. Good afternoon, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. Yeah, well, now I'm not going to, now that I know that the Real Joe Cruz is part Calabrese, I'm not going to mess up with that because those are mean people.
Be careful.
You know. Yeah, you have to be very careful.
Yeah, you got good. You said you had bad knees to start with. You don't want to make them worse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I might be kneecapped. Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the Christopher Columbus thing, you know, it shows that the Italians in New York are not as powerful as they once were, because I remember in the early 90s, there was a movement trying to take the Columbus statue, and the mayor at the time called his friends in Little Italy, and you had a bunch of local guys that came in that say, "Hey, what's the problem?" You know,
from a family named Colombo, of all things.
Yeah, on top of it.
Yeah,
And,
they had
there
four
was
other families that were their allies.
Yeah, there was a few fisticuffs, and actually nobody messed up with that statue for almost 15 years. maybe that's the solution to your problem there, you know. But things have changed just even in 25 years. So it's interesting, you know. You see basically all those statues and all those things reminds me, you know, Marxism is based on one thing. I mean, it's the eradication of the culture and of the symbols of that culture that is essential for the revolution. So going after the statues is very important. And, you know, last time I called, I kind of joked, you know, pretty soon we won't have any Democrats left and statues of Democrats left around. And I have a good friend that called me and said, well, you know, maybe it's not that accidental that the Democrats are removing memories of their bad deeds, if you wish, to kind of rewrite the script about who they are. You know, they're supposed to be those social warriors that fight for the minorities and everything, but we all know it's the party of the secession movement, it's the party of Jim Crow and separations and everything. So it's not accidental, I don't think. I think it's because we find out now that all those groups, BLM, Antifa, and everything, they're all tied up actually to the DNC. When you start pulling back the string and you see who is financing, who gets the money from those Fund Me campaign, now we are reading reports that some of the BLM money is going to the Joe Biden campaign for our election. So there is a lot of nefarious people out there that are pulling the strings. I think they're so afraid they cannot win the next election. They're even accusing Trump of cheating already, even though the vote has not been done. And we know that they've been pushing for a vote by mail, which is one of the worst ideas ever. We've already seen some of the results of that in some states. You know, I think North Carolina had an election and they found hundreds of ballots in Maryland, and it's like so ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, but it's also how people think. You know, I posted on one of my Facebook page a thing about the similarities between Antifa and what the Nazis were doing about, you know, stopping lectures, destroying statues, destroying books, burning books, and all those kind of things, which is exactly what we see from Antifa right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then taking the streets and neighborhoods by force, which is what we see in Chaz. And a good friend of mine I went to school with in Switzerland, who is Swiss, but lives out of all place in Milwaukee, if you can believe that, even though he lives in the northern neighborhoods there next to the golf courses. Say, well, why do you have to lecture us on that? I said, why do you ask me that? I said, I'm not trying to lecture you. I'm trying to warn you that if you forget history and its consequences, or even if you have a bad analysis of history, we are bound to relive it, very much so. And you know, you should remember, because he knows my family history, that I had three of my members of my family that were sent to concentration camp, and only one came back. And I had another one who was shot by firing squad because he was a hostage of the German when the resistance was doing things. They used to shoot 10 people for every German that was killed. And then he apologized finally. But it shows you when people are woke, they are like in a trance. They're not really thinking for themselves. And I know this guy very well. He's a very smart guy. He's usually very ponderate, but he's totally, you know, he's infected with the TDS syndrome, and and it doesn't seek straight, you know.
It's a dangerous combination, Frenchie.
It's a very dangerous combination, and what we see is not very nice, but I think the blowback from that will be bad. Now, I don't see any good solution happening in Seattle, and I think that's what those extremists want. They want to have a strong reaction, but I don't think the president will have much choice unless the governor finally built a backbone, but I doubt it.
Hey, Frenchie, I gotta go. I got a break coming
all
up
right.
here. I look forward to finishing this conversation on Monday, okay?
Yeah, you take care. You have a great weekend.
Thank you, Frenchie. Okay, so we've got, we're going down the home stretch here. As soon as we get out of the starting gate at Churchill Downs, I've got our James and our Carl in the green room.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Tumon are now open for takeout and free delivery services in selected locations. For more information, call 479-2652 or 3 or 969-2652. Open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comforts of your own home. They take your favorite local dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
This Father's Day, be one of 7 lucky winners of Circle K's Ultimate Father's Day Package. Get a case of tomahawk steak, a bottle of whiskey, a case of beer, and a Bacchus beer bag. That's a $300 value. Purchase $25 or more in fuel, or any 6-pack or more of Miller Lite, Coors Light, or Blue Moon to receive an entry form. Tune in to The Ray Gibson Show on The Point for more ways to win. Winners will be announced on June 17. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com or any Circle K location for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky Derby. Not today, maybe next year. We go straight from Churchill Downs in Louisville to Saipan, where we have our friend, our James, on the line. Good afternoon, our James.
How's it going, Bob?
Good.
You know, it's a really sad Friday.
All Fridays are sad, our James.
Yeah, because we're not going to be able to listen to you again until next Monday. We're going to have to rewrite your contract so you have to work 8 days a week.
I would look forward to that, even if it took some sort of an amendment to the solar cycle. It would be worth it.
Hey, you know, Frenchie beat me to it, but I'm going to expound on it just a hair. The founding fathers of our country, given the men that they were, and most importantly, at the time that our country was founded and they wrote our Constitution, our amendments, and Bill of Rights, were really, really smart guys who were forward-thinking to the future. These guys knew that there were things that had to be changed. These men knew that there were everything from slavery to personal rights to, you know, crooked politicians and sheriffs and tax collectors. They knew that there were things that had to be addressed that had been long set, even back into our European history before we came to the New World, that had to change. And they wrote a roadmap for the future. And they knew that this wouldn't be able to be done overnight. They knew it was going to take generation after generation after generation for it to finally be hammered into place, and that it would, to some extent, always be a work in progress. Now, after saying that, I would like your international listening audience to listen to what I'm about to say and let it sink in, because it's a little bit scary. Every great society, every great race on our planet in the history of our world has, at the end of or going into the end of the cycle of their existence, tried to rewrite their history. The Incas, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Romans, the Germans, just, if you want to call it recent past history.
Sure.
The night of the breaking of the glass, the night of the burning of the books, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They defaced all of their monuments. They defaced all of their great paintings and their carvings. The Egyptians defaced all of their hieroglyphs, trying to write certain people and certain events out of their history. And hence, as we discussed the other day, there's a reason why old saying and old adages are old sayings, is because they're true. If you don't keep your history close, and if you don't revert back to your history to see where you've already been and the mistakes that you've already made, you are doomed to repeat them again. And this has happened to every great society on our planet, like I said, from the Incans all the way up to the Germans at the beginning of World War II, in the beginning stages of their end. Now, I would really like to think that we haven't run our race yet, and that we've got at least a few hundred more years like the Romans had. The Romans ruled for centuries, and so did the Egyptians. So we're a very, very young country in the grand scheme of things, okay? I would really like for everybody to take a pause and let that sink in and think about it. Because if we continue down this path of trying to rewrite and get rid of and cover up and deface our history, we're not going to have anything to refer back to say, oh, yeah, been there, broke that, and no, we don't want to do that way again, so we're going to take a different road this time. But if we remove everything that we've already learned, we're going to start going backwards instead of forwards. Have a good weekend, Bob.
Very, very profound. Thank you for sharing, R. James. We'll see you on Monday, okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, that's pretty thought-provoking, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
And that's exactly where we are. We go back and we destroy statues. We put movies on the junk pile, etc., because they don't meet our standards nowadays. Okay, let's see. It's 5:55. I'm down the home stretch. Looks like I'm going to have R. Carl get me across the finish line. Good afternoon, R. Carl.
Hi, Bob. Good afternoon again. Yeah, I just wanted to add the brief thought that if this movement is really sincere about reaching into the past, sometimes the distant past, and tearing down any reminders of anything that had to do with racism and slavery, they're completely ignoring and missing the headquarters. They need to head to the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. They were the reason why slavery continued as long as it did. The Republican Party was created to oppose the pro-slavery party, the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party was responsible for all the cruel Jim Crow laws that segregated into black and white in everything. I mean, even drinking fountains. Those were all a product of Jim Crow laws created by the Democratic Party. And they created the paramilitary arm of the Southern Democrats, the KKK. Those are all Democrat Party creations. So if they're really sincere, if they want to do that, they need to tear down all vestiges and all famous people in the past who were Democrats, because especially during the slavery era, I mean, if they want to be consistent, and one of them is Robert Byrd, who died within it was just a few years ago, I think. He was a legendary Democrat. He was also, it was well known, he was a Ku Klux Klan Grand Dragon. And I forget what state he's from, but
Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, how many boulevards and streets and buildings and, other things are named for Robert Byrd? Change them all. If they really want to be consistent. And, of course, I recommend tearing down every single statue of Karl Marx, who, I mentioned on my first call, was an out-and-out avowed racist. And he was not secretive about it in his writings. He considered people of color, including Mexicans, and he was an anti-Semite. He was anti-Jewish as well. He considered such people inferior. And I could cite writings about the Mexicans and what he said about them. He was really quite insulting, but he did not think that people of color were in any way equal to whites. He was an out-and-out avowed racist.
The better to use them then, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bob, thank you for allowing me to chime in at the last few minutes.
You're always welcome on the Ferris wheel, Carl. We'll see you on Monday, okay?
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm setting my countdown clock right now.
Okay, so saying goodbye from the Constitutional Operations Zone here at Tall Tales. See you on Monday.